You don't look like someone who belongs in seat 2A. The words landed like a slap across the cabin. Captain Victor Lang didn't bother to lower his voice. He stood just inside the first-class curtain, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the woman holding a platinum boarding pass. A few passengers shifted in their seats, while others froze mid-sip. One flight attendant, Lisa Conway, let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. Another, Owen Marsh, blocked the aisle with a service card. And still, Amara Ellis didn't move. She stood tall, one hand gripping the boarding pass, the other holding a leather carry-on, dressed in a navy blazer and pearl earrings. She met Victor's stare without flinching, but the damage had already been done. Around her, the silence thickened, just long enough for a single phrase from a man in the second row to cut through it all. Some people really know how to fake it. Before we go any further, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. And if stories like this matter to you, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and let's keep shining light where others want silence. Now, back to the beginning. Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, Gate F7, June 12th, 7:40 in the morning. The doors to flight SW716 hadn't even closed yet when things took a turn that would ripple far beyond this cabin. Dr. Amara Ellis had flown hundreds of times in her life. But this flight was different. It was meant to be a milestone, not just another leg in her executive schedule. She was en route to Singapore to deliver a keynote address at the Global Tech Futures Conference. Her company, Quantum Leap Solutions, had just closed a groundbreaking neural interface contract, and she was flying on a personal investment, Stellar Wings Airlines. Amara was not just a passenger, she was a primary investor, one who had quietly pledged over $4 billion in funding over the last 18 months. She'd chosen to fly first class today, not for luxury, but to quietly observe the airline's service firsthand, away from boardrooms and titles. What she hadn't expected was to be stopped before even reaching her seat. It started when she presented her boarding pass to Lisa Conway, the lead flight attendant, just inside the cabin. Lisa took one glance, at the pass, then at Amara, and smiled thinly. "Ma'am, this is a priority seating zone. May I see your ID?" Amara raised a brow. Of course. She handed over her identification and boarding pass. Lisa examined them, then looked over her shoulder toward the cockpit. A subtle nod passed between her and Victor, who had just stepped into the aisle. Victor walked straight toward them, bypassing passengers still settling in. "Problem?" Lisa leaned closer and said, just loud enough for Amara to hear, "I think she might have boarded in error." "I didn't," Amara replied calmly. "My seat is 2A. Victor snatched the boarding pass from Lisa and turned it over like it might reveal some hidden trick. "And how exactly did you pay for this seat?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "With my own account," Amara said evenly. "Is there a reason I'm being questioned?" "Because seat 2A was assigned to someone else just a few minutes ago," Victor said. A few rows back, a tall white man in a pressed gray suit stood up and began walking forward. "That would be me," he said, nodding toward Victor. "Bradley Cole. I upgraded last minute. We handled it at the gate." Amara turned to Lisa. "There must be a mistake. I checked in last night. Seat 2A is mine." Lisa gave a one-shoulder shrug. "Sometimes systems change. We'll need you to wait in the galley while we sort this out." "No," Amara replied. "I'm not moving. You can check the records." Bradley stepped closer, eyes scanning Amara from head to toe. "Listen, I'm sure you're confused. These premium seats aren't just given away." That's when Victor leaned in with a smirk and delivered the line that would change everything. "You don't look like someone who belongs in seat 2A. The moment froze. Claire Bennett, a young woman in 3B, instinctively reached for her phone. So did Noah Hayes. Across the aisle, Emily Harper, the youngest member of the flight crew, blinked hard as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. She stepped forward, lips parted, but Lisa beat her to it. "Ma'am," Lisa said, louder now. "For everyone's comfort and efficiency, we'll need you to take a seat in the back until this is resolved." Amara said nothing. She opened her wallet and took out her platinum card, the one reserved for elite partners and shareholders. She held it out toward Victor, who stared at it for a second before shaking his head. "Looks nice," he said, "but anyone can have a card these days." Amara's hand didn't tremble, but her voice tightened. "Captain, this isn't about a card. This is about how you're treating me, publicly. You're assuming something about me. Why?" Victor crossed his arms. "If there's a problem, take it up with the gate, but as of now, your seat is reassigned." "Then explain this," Amara replied. She turned the card over and pointed to the embossed initials, then looked around the cabin. "I'm a stakeholder in this airline, a major one." Bradley chuckled. "She's bluffing." Emily Harper stepped forward. "Actually, I saw her check in. She was one of the first passengers on the manifest." Lisa gave her a sharp look. "That's enough. Harper." Just then, the intercom crackled to life, and Lisa's voice came through. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a seating discrepancy involving an unconfirmed passenger. Please remain seated." Amara's eyebrows lifted. "Unconfirmed?" "You heard me," Lisa said off mic. "Now kindly take a step back." Claire's phone stayed trained on the scene. "This isn't right," she said aloud. "I don't know who she is, but this isn't how you treat people." Amara took a breath. Inside, the old feelings surged up, memories buried beneath years of boardrooms and breakthroughs. When she was 23, she'd flown coach wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and a crew member had assumed she'd snuck up front. She'd laughed it off then, but something about it stayed with her. She'd vowed, in that moment, to one day be part of changing that industry. That vow had brought her here. And now, standing in a cabin she helped fund, she was being told she didn't belong. Again, a man in the aisle muttered, "Always some drama." Loud enough for others to hear. Bradley folded his arms smugly, and then, without warning, Lisa reached forward and snatched the platinum card from Amara's hand, flinging it onto the armrest of seat 3A. It landed face up. Noah moved fast. He picked it up, squinting at the name. "Dr. Amara Ellis," he read aloud. "CEO of Quantum Leap Solutions?" Several heads turned. Amara looked around the cabin, her eyes steady, voice calm. "You don't get to erase someone just because they make you uncomfortable," she said quietly. "Not today. Not in front of all these witnesses." Emily took a step forward. Claire's hands trembled as she kept recording. Victor stood silent, but his jaw clenched. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The coffee didn't spill by accident. Lisa Conway's hand moved too quickly, too carelessly, as she leaned toward Amara with a paper cup and a forced smile. "Here. Maybe this will help you calm down," she said, and tipped it just enough for the liquid to splash across Amara's navy blazer. The heat wasn't scalding, but it was enough to stain and draw a sharp gasp from several nearby passengers. Amara froze, not from pain, but from the pure audacity. She looked down at her chest, then slowly back up at Lisa, who had already straightened and stepped back like nothing had happened. Bradley Cole let out a theatrical sigh from behind her. "I told you," he muttered. "Some people just don't know how to handle first class." His voice was tinged with something smug, like he was daring her to respond. Amara didn't speak. She simply reached for a napkin from the drink cart, her hand steady despite the fury crawling under her skin. From the other end of the cabin, Owen Marsh arrived with 2 security tags clipped to his uniform and a practiced scowl. "Ma'am," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you need to come with me." He reached out and gripped her forearm, not aggressively, but not gently either, just enough to assert control. "This has gone far enough." Amara jerked her arm back. "Do not touch me again." But Owen stepped closer, his tone tightening. "You're causing a disruption." Several heads turned. A man in 4A pulled out his phone. A woman in 1D whispered, "This is getting out of hand." Lisa, still holding the now empty cup, offered a casual shrug to her fellow crew. "We tried to handle this quietly." At the back of the first-class cabin, Claire Bennett's camera was already recording. She'd lowered her phone to her lap, but her screen was angled up, capturing everything. "If this is how they treat her in first class," she whispered to Noah Hayes beside her. "Imagine what happens where no one's watching." Noah nodded grimly. He wasn't live streaming yet, but he was close. "Should I go live?" he asked. Claire hesitated. "If they keep pushing her?" "Yes." Amara took a step back, forcing Owen to release her. Her voice was low but razor-sharp. "You're trying to remove me from a seat I paid for, based on nothing but assumption and attitude, and now you're trying to paint me as uncooperative?" Lisa smirked. "It's not personal." Amara raised her voice slightly. "It's exactly personal." She looked around. "I'm the only one being asked for ID, the only one being questioned over and over, the only one being touched without permission." Owen looked toward the cockpit, then stepped aside. "Captain's orders." A low voice chimed in. Emily Harper. "Captain Lang is out of line." She'd been silent until now, but her voice was steady as she stepped forward. "I saw her boarding pass. I saw her ID. I logged her into the manifest. There's no error." Lisa turned on her, the professional mask slipping. "You don't speak for this cabin. Harper." But Emily didn't retreat. "Then speak for yourself. Because right now, we all see what's happening." Claire adjusted her grip on the phone. "Okay, that's it." She tapped the screen. "Going live?" A second later, Noah followed. "Recording now." From behind, another passenger muttered, "Good. Let people see this." Within seconds, quiet cabin noise was layered with whispers of, "They're filming," and, "Is this serious?" Amara didn't move. She stood at the intersection of aisle and injustice, with coffee on her clothes and condescension all around her. Meanwhile, back in her hotel suite, Amara's executive assistant, Nia Lawson, was already tracking the situation. A quiet alert had appeared in the internal system she'd activated minutes ago when Amara made her first call. Quantum Leap's oversight protocol was discreet, but powerful. When activated, it documented real-time incidents on partner operations, and right now, it was building a case. Amara's voice had been tight but composed during that earlier call. "Log every word, every action," and Nia had replied, "Already rolling." "Ma'am, please exit the cabin." Owen barked again, stepping closer. Lisa moved to support him, lips pursed, eyes on the passengers who were now clearly filming. Amara didn't flinch. "I'll leave when the truth does," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. It cut. Lisa scoffed. "If you don't comply, security will be called." Emily stepped between them. "She has complied. You're just refusing to listen." And then, Claire's voice rose. "You're on camera. All of you. This woman has done nothing wrong. We've got the whole thing." Owen froze. Lisa blinked. Bradley groaned. Can we get on with the flight? From behind him, a mother with a toddler leaned into the aisle. No one's delaying the flight but you. Let her sit down. More voices joined, not loud yet, but gathering force. A rising murmur of cabin discontent. Amara took out her phone and called Nia again. Escalate the protocol. Nia's voice came back instantly. System override engaged. Want me to loop in Simone? Amara paused. Not yet. Let them dig the hole deeper. Then she ended the call and turned to Lisa. You're creating a scene. Not me. Lisa stepped back, but Owen pushed forward, grabbing the handle of Amara's carry-on. Then take your things and step off. Now. As he tugged, Amara held firm. You don't have the right. Owen lowered his voice, but not his aggression. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Claire's voice came again, sharp and clear. You're making it harder. Not her. This time, more passengers responded. Let her sit. This is wrong. I'm not flying if she's forced off. And then the twist. Emily turned to face the cabin and, in a voice louder than any she'd used before, said, This isn't the first time this has happened on this route. I filed a complaint 2 months ago about similar treatment toward a paying passenger. No action was taken. The words sliced through the tension like glass. Lisa's jaw clenched. Owen went still. Victor, from the cockpit doorway, took one slow step back. Amara blinked. Claire stopped recording for a second, just to look at Emily, stunned. What did you say? Emily nodded, unwavering. There's a pattern. It's just never been exposed. Until now. Amara stepped forward again, past Owen. She stood beside Emily. Then let's expose it. Passengers began murmuring louder now, many rising halfway from their seats. The tide had shifted. Claire raised her phone again. Everyone deserves to know what's going on up here, she said. Lisa's voice cracked slightly. You've made your point. But no one sat back down. No one looked away. And Amara? She simply adjusted her damp blazer and looked Victor dead in the eye as he hovered near the door. You don't get to decide who belongs, she said. Not anymore. And now, to you watching. What would you say if you were standing next to Amara? Would you have stepped forward like Emily, or spoken up like Claire? Let us know in the comments, because silence has never changed anything. Captain Victor Lang stepped out of the cockpit, his voice sharp, cold, and unshakable. Officer Holt, remove her. Now. The words cut through the cabin like a blade. At the far end of first class, a tall, uniformed man emerged. Derek Holt, airport security. His posture was rigid, his pace deliberate. He didn't ask what had happened. He didn't speak to the passengers. His eyes locked straight onto Dr. Amara Ellis, and he advanced like someone sent to deal with a problem, not a person. Lisa Conway stood by the cockpit door and pressed the intercom. Her voice echoed overhead with rehearsed authority. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a delay due to a disruptive passenger. Please remain seated as security intervenes. It wasn't just an announcement. It was a narrative, one designed to isolate Amara, to frame her without a trial. Around her, a few passengers murmured, some turned away, others watched, wide-eyed and unsure. Claire Bennett, seated near the front, had already raised her phone again, recording every second. Beside her, Noah Hayes whispered, They're escalating it. His finger hovered over the record button. He didn't need to say why. Owen Marsh moved quickly from the galley, reappearing beside Amara like a shadow. This time he grabbed the handle of her leather carry-on with both hands, tugging it forcefully. Let's go, he said under his breath. Amara didn't move. Let go of my property, she said, her voice cool and deliberate. Owen pulled harder. Don't make this more difficult than it already is. But Amara didn't yield. She stood her ground, locked in place, her blazer still damp from Lisa's earlier accident. Just then, Derek reached her side and extended his arm toward her shoulder. No warning, no conversation, just force. She raised her hand, not to strike, but to block him. Her voice dropped into a calm, resonant place. "Do not touch me. You are seconds away from making this worse than you understand." Derek paused, his arm frozen mid-air. There was a tension now, not just in the aisle, but in the air itself. A stillness right before something breaks. Bradley Cole leaned forward from his aisle seat, arms folded, voice smug. "Oh, come on. She's the one who made this messy. Everyone's being patient except her." His smirk returned. "You'd think if she belonged here, someone would have recognized her already." It wasn't loud, but it was loud enough. And that's when it hit her. The same chill from years ago. Amara remembered a flight when she was 29, flying to Boston to speak at a tech conference. She had dressed sharply, navy suit, soft heels, tablet in hand. Her name was already on the speaker's program. She'd boarded early, taken her place in row 1C. Then a man had paused beside her, glanced at her seat number, then at her, and said, "You sure this is your seat?" She had laughed politely. But then a flight attendant came over and asked to double-check her boarding pass. Just to be safe. No apology followed. Just a polite nod and a stiff smile. She'd stayed quiet. That night, she opened her laptop, looked up airline investment structures, and started reading. She remembered thinking, "If I can't change their eyes, maybe I can change the system they answer to." And now here she stood, on her own investment, and still, being pushed to leave. Derek lowered his arm. "Captain's orders," he said stiffly. Emily Harper, the youngest flight attendant on crew, finally stepped forward, her voice sharp, firm. "Those orders are wrong." She turned to Victor at the cockpit door. "You know she belongs in this seat. I verified it myself. She checked in hours ago, long before Mr. Cole's last-minute upgrade." Victor didn't respond. Lisa looked furious. "Emily, return to the galley." But Emily didn't move. Claire raised her phone and spoke aloud. "Everyone's seeing this. Every word, every action." Then, turning to Amara, "You're not alone in this." Noah followed, standing beside her now. "This is no longer about a seating issue. It's about integrity. And who still has it?" Passengers were rising, quietly, cautiously. A woman in seat 1A stood. Then a man behind her. Another leaned out to get a better view. The tension had tipped. This wasn't the silent compliance that Victor expected. The cabin was stirring. Victor stepped forward, eyes locked on Amara. "You're lying," he said. "If you were who you say you are, we'd know. You'd be announced. You wouldn't come in quiet." His voice was full of disbelief, not confusion, but contempt. Amara met his stare. "That's the difference between me and you. I don't need to announce who I am to prove I belong." Then she turned, pulled her phone from her pocket, and dialed. "Nia," she said simply. "I need confirmation." Nia Lawson's voice came through the speaker. Clear. Professional. "Understood. Your position and funding are active. The executive order is ready." There was a pause. "Are you ready to proceed?" Amara looked around the cabin, at Lisa, at Victor, at Derek, at Owen still half-crouched near her suitcase. Then to Emily. Then to Claire and Noah. "Yes," she said. "Proceed." The call ended. Amara adjusted her damp blazer and took one small step forward. "Captain Lang, my name is Dr. Amara Ellis. I am the CEO of Quantum Leap Solutions. And until 1 minute ago, I was the largest private investor in Stellar Wings Airlines. With a $4 billion capital deal pending final release this quarter, I am revoking that agreement. Effective now. Silence swept through the cabin like a gust of wind. Lisa's lips parted. You can't do that. I just did. Victor shook his head slowly. You're bluffing. Emily stepped in. She's not. I saw her name on the manifest, on the internal system. Then, like a slow unraveling, Owen spoke. She's telling the truth. I saw the documents too. And then, unexpectedly, he added, quietly, Bradley offered me something. At the gate. A little thank you if the seat just happened to be available. Bradley's face twisted. I did no such thing. But it was too late. Claire turned her phone toward the crew. He bribed them to take her seat, and they let him. Amara's voice was now the only steady thing in the room. You didn't just try to humiliate me. You tried to rewrite the rules in real time, but the truth has a way of surviving, even at 30,000 feet. More passengers stood. Derek said nothing. He stepped back. Amara turned to the cabin. What happens next will not be silenced, and none of you will forget this moment. Now to you watching, if you had witnessed this from your seat, would you have stood? Would you have spoken? Or would you have looked away? Let us know below, because silence isn't neutral. It chooses a side. Officer Derek Holt didn't move. Not forward, not back. He stood locked in place, faced with a woman who had just dismantled an entire authority structure in less than 2 minutes. The other crew members were frozen, too. Victor, gripping the frame of the cockpit door like it might steady his unraveling position. Lisa still trying to process that the passenger she'd ridiculed not only belonged in that seat, but could now single-handedly pull the funding that propped up their airline. And then there was Owen, visibly shaken. Having just confessed to accepting what he now realized was a bribe, the silence in the cabin wasn't peace. It was a stunned reckoning. But it didn't last long. Bradley Cole stood up, red-faced, and pointed toward Amara as if she were the one disrupting order. This is ridiculous, he snapped. She's using some made-up title to make you all afraid. She probably bought a fake card online. Are you all seriously falling for this? A few heads turned, but most didn't even blink. The tide had already turned, and Bradley was standing knee-deep in a losing argument. Amara didn't respond to him. She looked past him, to the rest of the passengers. That's when another voice rang out. Quiet, but firm. I believe her, said a woman in 4A, standing slowly. I've worked in corporate for 20 years. I know composure when I see it. She didn't raise her voice once. You all did. Her tone wasn't theatrical. It was tired, like someone who had seen too much silence in moments that demanded something more. Then, as if on cue, the man beside her stood too. If you try to remove her, I'm not moving either. Claire, still filming from her seat, swept her phone across the aisle as more passengers began rising. Noah called out. You're going to need a bigger security team if you plan to force this, because no one's going anywhere. Derek Holt looked around, calculating. One man, surrounded by dozens now standing, arms folded or crossed, not yelling but resolute. Amara's presence had pulled something out of them, something long held beneath the surface, the knowledge that a line had been crossed, and that watching it happen in silence made them part of the problem. Lisa took a step toward the intercom again, but her hand was stopped, gently, but firmly, by Emily Harper. No, Emily said. They deserve to be heard. Victor's voice snapped from the cockpit. Harper, you're dismissed from this flight. But she didn't even flinch. Good, she replied. Because I won't stand by while you ruin what little reputation this airline has left. Amara turned slightly and met Emily's eyes. For the first time. Something softened in her expression. Gratitude. Restrained, but undeniable. She'd entered this flight prepared to fight alone. Now, the cabin was answering for itself. Derek cleared his throat. Dr. Ellis, you've made your position clear, but I have procedures. Amara stepped forward once, standing shoulder to shoulder with the line of passengers now forming a human barrier behind her. Then follow them, she said. Start with this. Check the official manifest, confirm my seat assignment, interview your crew under oath, and review the camera footage at the gate. Or, you can explain to the Department of Transportation why you forcibly removed a legal investor, with witnesses and documentation stacked against you. Derek opened his mouth, but closed it again. It was Claire who gave the push. You're being filmed. So is your hesitation. Suddenly, movement from the rear. A flight attendant from business class peeked through the curtain, hesitant. Is everything okay here? Her voice cracked slightly. Lisa turned, clearly rattled. Everything's under control. But the other attendant looked at the standing passengers. The silence. The faces. Doesn't look like it. Amara turned back to her phone and pressed a number on speed dial. The cabin listened as the call connected. Simone, she said, execute the lawsuit. A pause. Then the voice of Simone Grant, calm and razor-sharp. Filed. I'll coordinate with Public Relations and the Civil Review Board. FAA advisory team will be notified by end of day. Victor muttered something under his breath, then stormed back into the cockpit. Lisa looked like she wanted to disappear. Owen spoke again, voice low, almost remorseful. I didn't know who you were. Amara turned toward him. It shouldn't have mattered. Another voice chimed in, this time from a man seated near the rear of first class. You don't need to know someone's title to treat them with basic respect. More nods followed. A sense of collective ownership began filling the air, not just in defense of Amara, but of every traveler who had been dismissed, second-guessed, or quietly shuffled away. Lisa, breathing heavily, turned to Bradley. This was your idea. You said it was taken care of. Bradley threw his hands up. You took the offer. I didn't make you act like fools. He looked around, suddenly aware of the shifting energy. This whole plane has lost its mind. Emily stepped forward again. What it's found is its spine. Amara didn't smile. Not yet. She wasn't done. She turned to Lisa, her tone even but final. I want you, Owen, and Victor off this flight. You're relieved of duty, effective immediately. Officer Holt, please remove them from the cabin. I'll remain until a new captain and senior attendant arrive. Derek nodded, slowly. Understood. As Owen and Lisa were escorted away, Lisa still shaking her head in disbelief, Owen silent. Bradley made a last attempt to defend himself. I'm not part of the crew. You can't kick me off for asking to switch a seat. Amara's eyes didn't waver. You bribed your way into someone else's seat, then stood by while they were humiliated. That makes you complicit. She looked to the security officer. He's not flying today. Derek didn't argue. Bradley cursed under his breath as two airport staff stepped in from the jet bridge. Claire filmed his exit without flinching. The cabin remained quiet as the door closed behind them. Amara stood near seat 2A, still not sitting. Simone's voice came again from the phone. Media's already picking it up. A response will be necessary. Amara nodded. Let it be measured, but honest. The remaining passengers slowly returned to their seats, though some kept glancing forward like they had just witnessed something more than a corporate conflict, like they had been part of a reckoning. Amara adjusted her collar and finally sat down, not as a passenger, but as the woman who had just stopped a plane without ever raising her voice. The storm wasn't over, but the cabin had cleared, and the world Soon. Would know exactly why. The cabin door had barely clicked shut behind Bradley when Amara Ellis finally stood still, not as someone under siege, but as the immovable center of everything that had just collapsed around her. Her blazer was still faintly stained with dried coffee. Her boarding pass crumpled in her pocket, but her posture was unwavering. Victor had been removed. Lisa and Owen, gone. Bradley, escorted out. And yet the air inside the first-class cabin still felt thick with tension, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what she would do next. Claire sat poised in her seat, phone no longer recording, but her eyes fixed on Amara as if witnessing something rare. Noah had stopped talking entirely, arms crossed, absorbing the moment. Emily Harper, now the only remaining member of the original crew, stood quietly beside the beverage cart, no longer an observer, but something closer to a witness. Amara stepped forward and lifted her phone again, this time with deliberate calm. "Nia," she said. Her assistant's voice came through instantly. "We're clear. Corporate is watching. Stakeholders are aligned. Media cycles started." Amara nodded. "Send confirmation of the investment cancellation to Stellar Wings Corporate." A pause. Then, "Done." The words dropped like iron into the cabin. "And the lawsuit?" "Filed 15 minutes ago," said Simone Grant, who had already joined the call. "Preliminary injunction, civil rights violation, breach of investor protocols. We'll follow with FAA notice in the morning." Amara didn't blink. "Good." She lowered the phone, then turned slowly to face the first-class passengers, many still upright, some seated, all watching. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said quietly, "what you just witnessed is no longer just about me. It's now a matter of federal review." She looked to Emily. "I want you reassigned, permanently. My team will ensure you land in a department that deserves your integrity." Emily's mouth parted, stunned. Thank you." Amara offered a simple nod. Then she turned toward seat 2A, the very seat she had been denied, insulted over, physically blocked from, and nearly dragged away from. She looked down at it but didn't sit yet. Instead, she raised her voice just slightly and addressed the entire cabin. "My name is Dr. Amara Ellis. I am the founder and CEO of Quantum Leap Solutions. This morning, I boarded this aircraft quietly. No entourage, no announcement. I did so because I prefer to see how companies treat real people, not just partners, but I also happen to be, or was, the largest private investor in Stellar Wings Airlines, with a pledged investment of $4 billion, pending final disbursement this quarter." Gasps scattered through the cabin like small aftershocks. A few heads turned, others whispered. "Today," Amara continued, "that deal has been canceled, permanently." One passenger, a woman in 1A, let out a breath and whispered, "My God," Amara added. "In place of that investment, we are opening litigation, civil and corporate." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Not because I was insulted, but because systems only change when silence is broken. At the root." And then, just as she lowered her hand, came a voice from the back. Quiet, flat. Owen Marsh. "There's something I need to say." Eyes turned toward him. He had remained inside the cabin, sitting in the jump seat just past the divider, his face pale and lined. "When Bradley approached me at the gate, he said the seat was already handled. He handed me a card, said it was a thank you. I didn't ask questions. I didn't think it mattered. But it does." Claire turned to look at him. "You took a bribe." Owen nodded, shame blooming across his face. "I did, and I regret it." Amara didn't respond immediately. She let the confession hang there, unrescued. It wasn't her job to soften it. Beside Owen, Emily spoke, her voice low. It wasn't just him, I overheard Lisa telling Victor. Don't worry, it's covered. He's paying enough. She turned to Amara. This wasn't a mistake. It was arranged. Amara stepped closer, phone in hand. Simone, did you get that? Recorded and logged, Simone replied. We'll add the bribery angle to the corporate ethics violation claim. Then, another voice, one that had remained silent until now. Derek Holt, the security officer, standing just outside the flight deck, looked down at the floor and muttered. I was told by Captain Lang that the woman in seat 2A was using fraudulent credentials. He insisted it was a customer safety risk. He said it would be cleaner if I didn't ask questions. Amara raised her head. And did you? Derek didn't meet her eyes. No, I didn't. Amara gave no outward reaction, just a breath. Then, that makes 3 of you. 3 separate employees who conspired or complied to remove a verified passenger under false pretenses. Simone's voice returned. That seals it. We'll pursue full financial damages, breach of fiduciary duty, defamation, and coordinated negligence. By the time this goes public, Stellar Wings will have no choice but to respond, Nia added. Our PR teams are drafting the press statement now. They've requested a quote from you, Amara answered without hesitation. Tell them this. Accountability begins when the silence ends, and mine just did. She looked back at the seat, the one they tried to steal. Silence and sanitize. Then she looked to Claire, to Noah, to Emily. You didn't have to say anything, but you did. And that's the difference between being present and being complicit. Claire's voice cracked. I couldn't have stayed quiet, Noah added. Some things you don't unsee. Amara nodded. Then, finally, slowly, she sat. Seat 2A, the one they fought to keep her from. Now fully hers again, not because she insisted, but because she exposed what they tried to hide. The cabin didn't erupt. There was no applause. Just the hush of realization, a quiet respect, not for her wealth or her title, but for what she had endured and refused to let pass. She leaned back against the headrest and said to no one in particular, It's not over yet. And she was right. Outside that cabin, corporate boards were stirring, phones were ringing, screenshots were already being circulated. But here, within these ivory seats and this narrow aisle, something had changed. Not everything, but enough. Enough to make them think twice the next time they judged someone by silence, by status, or by how loudly they chose to speak. And for the first time since she boarded that plane. Dr. Amara Ellis closed her eyes, not to rest, but to remember the line she had drawn, and the system she was about to bring to its knees. Within minutes of Amara's final declaration, the tone of the cabin had shifted from confrontation to consequence. Though the cabin lights remained low and the hum of the engines steady, something much bigger than turbulence was unfolding behind the scenes. Simone's voice returned through Amara's phone, sharp and controlled. The press embargo is breaking. 5 outlets have already picked it up. The footage is circulating. Amara nodded slowly, her tone calm but firm. Let them. The truth doesn't need rehearsal. Claire and Noah, now sitting again but alert, exchanged a glance as notifications started to pop up on their screens. Brief clips, headlines, muted quotes, all pointing back to the moment Amara stood her ground. Across the aisle, Emily Harper, reassigned and now seated beside another flight attendant from the backup crew, leaned toward Amara and whispered, They're already spinning it. Corporate will blame the crew. Amara turned to her, voice low. Then we'll expose what they've allowed. And she meant it. Because this was never just about Victor or Lisa or Owen. This was about an ecosystem that quietly permitted shortcuts, cover-ups, and a culture where silence protected power. That protection had cracked, and now the flood was beginning. Simone continued. Our legal filings are now public. FAA has flagged it. Multiple passenger statements are being verified. You'll be contacted within the hour for a formal deposition. Amara didn't flinch. Send it all to the board. At that moment, Nia's voice broke through the second line. We just received a tip. Multiple passengers over the last year were reassigned mid-flight without notice. Same gate terminal, same crew. In most of those cases, they never filed complaints, but one tried and was silenced with a settlement. Amara sat forward. Who was involved? Nia paused. Lisa, Victor, and Derek. They buried it under security language, all under your brand. The final words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had been burning long before today. Amara looked out at the cabin, not at the people, but the walls, the rows, the uniformed seats arranged like quiet witnesses. Document everything, names, dates, payouts, Simone confirmed. It'll all be included in the formal brief. We'll request internal memos under legal disclosure. By the time the board meets tomorrow, Stellar Wings will be facing a financial hemorrhage, Noah whispered to Claire. This is bigger than we thought. Claire nodded. She's not just fighting for her seat. She's dismantling the whole machine. The passengers nearby had quieted completely now. Phones down, eyes forward. A sort of reverence had taken over, not for the drama, but for the unraveling of a structure so many had accepted without question. Amara glanced down at her wristwatch. Only 19 minutes had passed since boarding. 19, and already. Billions of dollars were shifting in and out of futures. Headlines were forming in real time, and at least 3 careers had ended before takeoff. Then, another voice. This one trembling, not because of fear, but release. Owen, seated beside a backup crew member, raised his hand slightly. There were others, he said, quietly. Not just this flight. Last month, a couple in business class. The man offered cash. Victor approved the swap. Lisa said it was handled. Emily nodded slowly. There was a woman last winter who cried in the galley. Said she was downgraded after checking in early. Lisa told me not to get involved. Amara turned to them, her expression unwavering. And none of you reported it? Owen hesitated. We were told it was routine. Amara let the silence stretch. So was this. The words were soft, but they landed hard, not as accusation, but as indictment. Simone's voice returned, this time quieter. The lawsuit's been updated. These new revelations expand the scope. We'll add a request for formal investigation of all passenger records over the last 18 months. If they resist, we'll subpoena the audit logs, Nia added. Several media outlets are requesting statements. And, Amara, several competitors just reached out. Privately, they want to talk. Amara didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth flickered. Let them wait. Today isn't for opportunity. It's for truth. Claire turned slightly in her seat. Voice hushed. It's strange how fast everything fell apart. Amara didn't look at her. She kept her eyes forward. Tone quiet. It didn't fall apart today. It fell apart years ago. Today just made it undeniable. Outside, the jet bridge was still connected. Ground crew had delayed final boarding. But inside the cabin, a very different kind of departure had already begun. Not of passengers, but of patience, of secrets, of systems once considered untouchable. By the time the flight attendant announced that takeoff would be postponed, no one seemed surprised. No one even complained. They were watching something far more important take off, and it didn't need wings in the hours that followed. Stellar Wings Airlines issued a carefully worded statement describing the incident as a miscommunication between crew and passenger. But by then, it was too late. The footage was already circulating. Passenger testimonies were being picked up by every major news outlet. FAA investigators launched an internal inquiry, and within 48 hours, the board of Stellar Wings convened an emergency session, not to review the situation, but to contain the damage. It didn't work. Victor Lang, Lisa Conway, and Derek Holt were permanently removed from duty and placed under formal review by regulatory authorities. Owen Marsh resigned quietly. Lawsuits from other passengers, long buried or dismissed, began resurfacing. The airline's stock plummeted, shedding billions within days. But Amara Ellis wasn't watching the financial collapse. She was watching the public conversation, how it shifted from curiosity to reckoning. It wasn't just about one woman's seat anymore. It was about a system of quiet exclusion, long ignored, suddenly undeniable. Her actions had triggered a chain of accountability that no press release could undo. And yet, amid the fallout, Amara remained composed. She never gave a press conference, never sought applause. Her silence had already spoken louder than most voices ever could in the weeks that followed. She turned her focus toward the future, not just for herself, but for others like Emily, whose courage had changed the course of that day, with Simone's help and Nia's coordination. Amara launched a private review board for employee ethics in commercial aviation. Within a month, they began interviewing crew members across competing airlines who'd faced similar moral crossroads, those who'd stayed silent, and those who'd tried to speak. Emily Harper was offered a leadership role in that program, mentoring future attendants on how to navigate pressure without compromising values. Meanwhile, passengers who had supported Amara during the flight each received personal letters and compensation for the distress caused. None of it required, all of it deliberate. When asked why she bothered, Amara simply replied, "Because justice isn't enough. People need to feel seen." But even amid progress, one more twist emerged, quietly, behind the scenes. A former operations supervisor from Stellar Wings, recently dismissed, came forward with a document, an internal memo from early 2024 outlining an unofficial practice at Gate F7. The memo, reviewed and verified by Simone's legal team, revealed that certain priority upgrades had been informally encouraged through gate-level discretion. As long as they didn't disrupt company image, the policy had never been approved publicly, but it had been executed privately. Victor, Lisa, and even Derek had been following an unspoken culture of flexibility that benefited favored passengers, often at the expense of those least likely to challenge it. The revelation didn't surprise Amara. It confirmed what she already knew. The system hadn't just failed her. It had been designed to... 3 months later, on a bright September morning, Amara stood on the tarmac of a newly unveiled terminal in Austin, Texas. She wasn't there as a speaker or an investor. She was there as founder of Elevate Air, a new boutique airline built on one guiding principle: dignity first. The cabin design emphasized transparency. Boarding procedures included third-party ethics liaisons, and every first-class seat came with one thing no passenger had to earn: respect. The crew she'd hired included former whistleblowers, retired attendants, and those denied promotions for speaking out. Emily Harper was promoted to head of in-flight operations. Claire Bennett joined the communications team. Even Noah Hayes contributed, consulting on digital accountability protocols for customer support. As Amara watched the first Elevate plane rise into the sky, she said nothing. She simply watched it vanish into the clouds, not as someone who won, but as someone who refused to be erased. And to you watching now, let this moment be more than a story. Let it be a reminder. You don't need a title to speak truth. You don't need applause to matter. What you need is the courage to say, "Not today," because the moment you do, everything changes.